Welcome to Mia's world. Welcome to my world. Welcome to our world. Welcome to another installment of a wonderful show where we talk with people who are passionate about what they're passionate about. And tonight I have a magnificent guest whom I have known for a while. And he's an illustrator and a wonderful guy in his own right. He's just come out. He's done, I don't know how many books. I stopped counting, but the latest one to come out is called Red and Green and Blue and White from Querido. Is it Levine Querido? Is that it, Paul?
Mm-hmm.
Levine Querido. And it's quite an interesting book with a wonderful message about compassion and love and upstanders versus bystanders. We'll talk more about this later, but Paul O. Zelinsky is my guest. And so welcome to Mia's World, Paul.
Thank you, Mia. Very glad to be here.
Great to have you in the house, along with Moringo the Flamingo and Mia and Paul. P-O-Z. What is the O for? Paul O. Zelinsky.
Okay, well, I think I will, because this is so public, I probably won't quite tell you because it's my mother's maiden name. Is my middle name. It's not a first name. It's a last name. So
love it. That's interesting.
When
my mother's last maiden name Orenbach with an O, so we have a parallel lives here.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was maybe for optimistic because
it may be that too.
That too, right?
When I first moved to Brooklyn, I found out that there was another artist named Paul Zelinsky living in New York.
Really?
Yes. And he actually, I was getting calls from collection agencies because he wasn't a very honest person or something. He took money for work that he didn't do. And they were coming after me. And I decided that was when I was going to start using my middle initial all the time professionally.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That is crazy. Well, Paul O. Zelinsky, welcome to Mia's World. I just want to say we started out the show with a video from Alexia Bontempo, a former guest of mine, a Brazilian singer, songwriter, beautiful, beautiful singer with I'm in Love Again, which was originally composed by Cy Coleman, Peggy Lee, and Bill Schluger. So that was I'm in Love Again. And I'm in love with you, Paul.
Oh, I'm in love with you too. I'm really glad.
I'm in love with your work. I'm in love with your soul. I'm in love with your spirit. And I'm in love with your whimsy and yet your devotion to your passion, which is art, really. So let's talk about that. But before we get into the interview, we always do this on Mia's World. We have some trivia that we go through about today's date. Now, you may not be listening to the show on November 8th, but today is November 8th. So here's a couple of facts about November 8th. Today's birthdays include Alain Delon, the French actor, 1935, Patti Page, the singer, 1927, famous for one of my favorites, Tennessee Waltz, Parker Posey, the actress, 1968, Milton Bradley, the game manufacturer. You may remember Candyland. That was one of my favorites. Milton Bradley, born in 1836, Margaret Mitchell, from Gone with the Wind, writer, 1900, singer Bonnie Raitt, 1949, and Ricky Lee Jones, 1954. Also, two of my favorite people, Christian Barnard, the South African cardiac surgeon who performed the first heart transplant, born in 1922, and in 1897, Dorothy Day, a social activist, a journalist, and a devout Catholic convert, born in Brooklyn, New York, 1897. A few things from November 8th in history. In 1837, Mount Holyoke in Massachusetts was founded, the first US college founded for women. In 1880, French actress Sarah Bernhardt made the US debut at the Booth Theater. In 1895, German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen produced and detected electromagnetic radiation in a wavelength range today known as X-rays. In 1932, amidst the Great Depression, Democrat candidate Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected president of the United States, defeating incumbent Herbert Hoover. And in 1960, John F. Kennedy was elected president of the US, defeating Richard Nixon. November 8th holidays. Today is Abet and Aid Punsters Day. It's Cook Something Bold Day. It's International Tongue Twister Day. It's National Ample Time Day, and I hope we have ample time for Paul. It's National Cappuccino Day, my personal favorite. It's National Dunce Day, National Harvey Wallbanger Day, and National Parents as Teachers Day. And finally, before we get back with Paul in our interview, our rhyming wrap-up of the news, which we've been doing, or I've been doing every week, every installment for over 10 years. So here's the installment for today. We make the news a little bit more sparkly. Is the government strict or lax? Are we hearing fake news or facts? Will the mandate stick? Will it do the trick to make citizens take the vax? First responders were once saluted. Now many are being booted by our crazy mayor. I need a Bayer, cops and firemen being recruited. They claim they've already got antibodies now put on the spot. Are our freedoms erased like cut and paste? Is this America or not? The mayoral race was gigantic. New Yorkers are becoming frantic. The rise in crime is an issue prime. The city's rubbed out the romantic. The Virginia governor race proved that parents are back in grace. They all have concern about what their kids learn, that they're not left in outer space. Huge animosity between Dems and the GOP. The huge spending bill seems to incite ill will. Is that our destiny? Last year it was delayed, but the Halloween parade made a comeback last week. It was scary and chic, an eye-popping escapade of costumes from Batman to Squid, the TV games off the grid. Too violent for me, but most disagree, from Moscow to Maine to Madrid. Kim Kardashian under a spell? Was it just show and tell? Holding hands with pride on a roller coaster ride with Pete Davidson from SNL. But the reliable word is out, so don't project or pout that they hang as friends like two cute bookends, romance to come, no doubt. And it's Cappuccino Day, so stir and sip away. Let's talk caffeine, more fun than vaccine. Now where is my Chardonnay? And that's the news of the week, according to Mia. And now we go back to my guest, Paul Zelinsky. So a few little facts about Paul. There's so many, Paul. So many people know you from Wheels on the Bus, a best-selling movable book of yours, along with Patty, what is it, Paddywhack?
Well, Knick-Knack, Paddywhack, which very unfortunately has gone out of print.
I know, I read that. I could not believe that. It's so sad. Maybe it'll come back. In 1998, Paul got the Caldecott Medal, which is really a esteemed medal for the picture book illustration of Rapunzel. And that is a gorgeous, gorgeous book. You grew up in Wilmette, Illinois, son of a math professor and a medical illustrator mother. How interesting, how interesting. What an interesting combo. I think you went to Yale College, you enrolled in a course in picture books, history, and the rest is history for you. Your first book appeared in 1978. And how many books have you done? 4,000?
I wish. No, I was telling somebody today that anything with a number, I forget instantly. And that's a number actually I even want to forget because I wish I had done more all the time.
Oh, but you've done so many more than most people that I know.
But in the 40s, the number is in the
40s.
Mm-hmm.
It's what's interesting to me is, and then we'll go into your background. I love hearing about backgrounds and what inspired you. But I think what's so interesting about Red and Green and Blue and White, which has a really deep personal message for community and compassion and love and standing up, the bystanders versus the upstanders. I love that in the book, which we'll talk about. The community stands up against bigotry and anti-Semitism specifically, but your books have gone the gamut from whimsical to profound. So, you've got Zoo Doings, animal poems based on Jack Prelutsky, and Knick-Knack, Paddywhack, and The Maid and the Mouse and the Odd-Shaped House based on your poem, and Z is for Moose. So you've got the real whimsical, but you've also got the very serious. So that's a very interesting combo. But let's just go back in time a little bit to your childhood. Did you used to doodle or draw when you were a child?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I was the kid in class who was always drawing on something. And I would try to keep my notebook clean at the beginning of every year. In September, I would get a new notebook and I said, really, this is so nice. It's clean, no messy things on it. And by the second day, there were little little airplanes and chickens all over the margins of whatever I was supposed to be taking notes on. Yeah, it's a kind of an obsessive thing with my hand.
Well, that must just, do you think that's inherited because your mother was a medical illustrator? And I saw a magnificent self-portrait that she did on your website, by the way, paulozelinsky.com, Zelinsky. Beautiful self-portrait that she did. So do you think part of it's genetic or part of it's just inspired and you just taught yourself? Or
Well, it's hard to know, but I do kind of think that there was a large genetic component to, maybe just like a connection between eye and hand. That might not be, it is learned, you do learn it. And I definitely, saw my mother drawing, and, she would draw us kids, and she had a great facility and a real gift for likeness and getting shapes down exactly right. So better than I ever could do, frankly.
were her parents artists?
No, no. Although actually, it's kind of interesting. Let me see. I can't show you this right now, but her grandmother was a grandmother. In her 70s, someone gave her a set of paints, and I think it might have been my mother who did it. And she started painting, and what came out of her were the flood of paintings. My family was just filled with great grandma's paintings. We called her great, and they had the style. They were a very primitive, Grandma Moses kind of style, but I think better. She was very talented and amazingly so. But she didn't. It's something she started right toward the end of her life.
Wow,
And
that's an inspiring thing right there, right? It's never too late, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that is really lovely. What about your kids? Do they draw? I mean, they're grown.
We have two daughters, and they're both grown, and they both draw very well. But one thing they never had was this obsession. I guess they could keep their notebooks clean. So maybe that's the difference between somebody who actually becomes an artist and somebody who doesn't. If you can't help it, then
right.
It's a little different.
But not necessarily, not in a bad way, just in a passionate way. Like I started to say, it's like you have to do it, like actors have to act and comedians have to do comedy, or singers have to sing, or
I think so. It really is. It's sort of a weird thing.
And so you took some lessons at some point in life, right?
Yeah, I never thought that the lessons taught me that much. When I was a kid, and I don't really know what grade, but maybe around third or fourth, fifth, possibly, they signed me up for lessons at the Chicago Art Institute on Saturday mornings.
Wow, because you grew up in Wilmette, which is a suburb, right?
Yeah, the L train goes from downtown Chicago. One line goes all the way straight north out of Chicago, and just over the line through Evanston, and then over that line just into the edge of Wilmette. And they would take me to the train and put me on the train, and I would just take myself down all by myself. That was the thing that made me most proud, more than anything to do with the lessons. And when I got there and had the lessons, it was here's some kind of boring bunch of things on a table and draw it. But I loved the fact that I was doing this. So it's that probably builds an interest in becoming an artist. Is even if it's not the lessons themselves, it's something stuff around it.
Yes, exactly. Like maybe the actual materials too. Were you drawn to the actual paints? Watercolors or oils, or I don't know, pen and ink. I'm not sure.
I had at home. I loved the things that I had at the Art Institute pro classes. I didn't like at all. The tempera paints, I don't like the smell of them. You know what that smell is? The whole school had a smell that I didn't like.
I'm surprised you didn't quit.
I was very proud to be there to be doing it. And I would get out of the subway and I'd walk through. We had some permission, I guess, to walk in. I think maybe the Art Institute was free then. I walked in through the front doors with the lions on the side and the columns and everything, and this magnificent art, which I also loved, and walked through to the back of the museum. And there's a little door that you wouldn't really notice. And you opened that door, and that was where the school was. It went from being magnificent, museum to this huge mess, which was sort of cool in its own way, the art school mess, you know, and giant rooms with the stacks of shelves and paintings sitting on, and yeah.
Well, do you like, another question I have for artists in general is, do you like working messy, or do you like being like a chemist? Everything has to be in its place, and cleaning the space and cleaning up or mixing paints or whatever.
Oh, my cleanliness is sort of concentrated within the borders of the art, and I'm very obsessively like that.
Yeah.
But I don't ever remember that if I pick up something, I should put it away. The idea that you should put away the things that you pick up, or even the idea that if you're holding something, you want to pick something else up, you might put the first thing down first.
Yeah,
I'm working on that, but there are a lot of things sort of.
Brain. I want to just hold up some pictures here from the book.
That's Isaac and Teresa, the boy whose window had the menorah in it.
Do you want to tell a little bit of the story of?
Sure. Yeah, it's based on, inspired by a true story. So this boy named Isaac was the only Jewish family in the neighborhood, and he had a menorah in the window of the house. And one dark night, someone threw a rock through the window. And his good friend Teresa, now the author Lee Wind has written it with a little more, with some fictionalizing. So in this book, Teresa lived across the street from him.
Yes.
And she was an artist. And she, in response to this terrible thing that happened to him, and they didn't know even whether they would put the menorah back up in the window once it was fixed or not. And Isaac decided if they didn't, it would be like they were hiding that they were Jewish, and that did not feel right. So the menorah goes back in, and Isaac writes poems through this book. And the poems describe what's going on about the light, different lights from Christmas trees, lights from the menorah. Well, Teresa makes a picture of a menorah and puts it up in her window after Isaac has decided that they're going to keep their menorah in their window. And so this act that she started, this idea of putting a picture of menorah in a window, her class got involved, and they did that, and then friends did, and word spread, and the library had this program. They did it in clubs and restaurants, and started to be all around Billings, Montana, which is in this book. It doesn't say where it is, but in the real life story was Billings. And in fact, in real life, the newspaper printed a full page picture of a menorah with an editorial on it that was very stirring and moving. And people could take this and put it up in their window. And that is why there were, within a couple of weeks of the incident, there were 10,000 windows in Billings, Montana, with menorahs in them. And it's a wonderful story. And
that is an incredible story about how standing up, the upstanders versus the bystanders standing on the side, not participating, it's a beautiful, beautiful story. So how did you choose what kind of medium to use for the book? I mean, how do you choose? Is it each book has a different feel for you? How do you?
Yeah, no, you got it. That's it exactly. It's all just like trying to pinpoint the feeling first, and then trying to think about what could create that feeling, the feeling that I wanted.
What is the medium that you use here? Are these?
Actually, this is purely digital. So it kind of looks like gouache. It's opaque. It's opaque layers of paint. It's not real paint, but something with some texture and some sort of grittiness. And then also, because it's digital, it's the eraser brush carves into an image in a way that looks a lot like woodcut or something like that, or scratch board. That negative line, which you can't get on paper, by drawing really, but you can get by cutting away. And that feeling of cutting away is in there too. So I think it looks very much, I think, like it's not digital, I hope.
Does not look digital. No, that's why it looks sort of like, I don't know.
No, but when you try to figure out exactly what material might have been used to make this, there isn't one because it's got both positive and negative, the adding and subtracting with different, brushes. And I did it really partly. I've been using my computer more lately.
You like doing that, or?
I like doing it. There are certain challenges. I teach myself different things, and it's really great pleasure to learn. When sometimes I turn a corner and I've really learned some important stuff. But also it's kind of driven by fear, because on the computer there's this, Command Z, the undo button, multiple undos all the way back. Everything you do wrong, you can undo. And
oh, that would not be good for me. Too many options.
well, it's
great if you want to undo something, right?
Yeah, no, it just takes the thread away. And the watercolor is famous for being a commitment.
Exactly.
This, and there's no going back. You can't erase. You can't do anything. And this is the absolute opposite. You can erase to your heart's content.
Do you have any samples in your studio reachable at some point to show a couple of other illustrations of other books that you've done?
Absolutely. I can show, I could do two things. I could go get a book, or I could go pull out the actual art itself. I think we could try this, because I have my camera here and I can carry it around the room.
This studio in Brooklyn, in the Brooklyn Heights, right?
In Brooklyn Heights, yeah. So this couch here, this captain's bed, has drawers in it that a woodworker friend made for me.
Oh, beautiful.
And because they're sized to hold standard sheets of art paper.
Oh, wow.
So I think if I open the drawer, let me see, is this the right one? No. I open the drawer.
Yeah.
I've got here, this is a piece of art from Rapunzel.
Oh, it's a magnificent book, Rapunzel, that you illustrated. Oh, beautiful.
It's
now, is that oil?
Yeah, this is oil on paper.
Wow.
And this was our cat. You asked about the cat.
Yes.
There was Skimby. He only lived, I think, till age 6.
Oh.
But that was oil on paper, and done with.
And what kind of paper is that? Is it thick?
It's watercolor. Yes, it's thick watercolor paper. And it's. I'm trying to think what else would be good to pull out. It's
anything you want. It's your choice.
Another drawer. This one.
I love that piece of woodwork. I mean, that cabinet is magnificent. What kind of wood is that? Do you know?
That's bird's eye maple.
Beautiful.
This here's a picture from. Z is for moose. Let me see if I can.
Oh, Z is for moose. One of my favorites of your books.
No, I think I can easily shift the camera again. This should work.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the cat. This is actually a combination of digital and not digital.
Ah, interesting.
The very flat colors. Those are printed out on this paper, but I painted the cat in watercolor.
Was that based on your cat?
No, this is a generic cat.
Okay.
Very generic. It's a. Sorry for this. Here, get me back in the picture. It's the text starts out as the world's most generic, boring alphabet book, because A is for apple, B is for ball, and C is for cat. So you want the most uninspiring cat possible there. Because turn the page and get to D, and it says D is for moose. Because it actually says D is for a duck, but the duck is being eclipsed by this giant moose who comes in and interrupts, and suddenly it's saying Z is saying D is for moose, and that's when trouble starts.
Yes, this is a most quirky, wonderful, humorous book. Z is for moose.
Thank you. I think I'll come back now. This was not sure how this worked, but
and I do love moose, all things moose. So your moose books are wonderful.
thank you. There are a couple of them here.
Those are interesting examples of how you choose the medium because you just, whatever it feels right to you, you know, that's what you're saying basically.
Yeah. Whatever feels right for the story. And I really, I've had a great, it's been a privilege actually being able to work on different books that are so different that give me the chance to try different looks.
Like you, for Rumpelstiltskin, you used watercolor, I think?
Rumpelstiltskin was the same technique as Rapunzel. It was actually, it was oil, but underneath the oil, there's an underpainting in watercolor. So it was in the Renaissance, the technique for oil painters, when it was first being developed, and still could be like this, is that you start with a whole painting that has no color in it, but all the values are established. So it's rounded and darks and lights, those are all there, and the painting is all there. And then colors get added in transparent layers, sort of thin, transparent layers called glazes. And that gives it a richness that you can't get by mixing up rich colors. It's just, it's called jewel-like, you know, usually you hear about the colors.
Yes.
And the reason is that it's exactly like jewels, because when there's a jewel, you look into an emerald and you're looking through the color, and the light goes down to the bottom and bounces back through all that green, clear green. And that's what's happening with the glazes exactly.
Do you, I know this is a kind of a crazy question, but do you have a favorite color?
Oh, do you know, is this a setup? Because on my website, there's a page devoted to my favorite color.
Really? I did not see that. I thought I combed everything in your website. Apparently not. No.
Well, maybe I should go back and check to see that it's still functioning. It's kind of a maze, my website, but the fact is, and I'm gonna, this is a spoiler.
You don't have to tell, but
well, you'll find my favorite color. It's not named. It's just a square of it.
Okay.
If you refresh the page, you'll see that I've changed my favorite color.
Ah, interesting. I was going to ask you that question before the interview so I could wear your favorite color, but instead I chose.
Yeah, that'd be tricky.
Yeah, but I chose blue and white in honor of your book, you know.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm doing that too, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But I did try to amuse my daughters when they were little by having that question, by having answers to that question. They would say, "What's your favorite color?" And I would say, "Well, blue, green." And they'd say, "Okay, what's your favorite color now?" And it's kind of a dark burnt orange color. And okay, now what is it? You know, and it's purple, obviously. So that's. Okay.
Well, then of course you could talk about the colors that make up the color that's your favorite color. I mean, it goes on and on. But so how did it happen that how do these things work? That do people, well, now that you're pretty, you know, very established in the world of illustration, you've gotten so many awards. You had the Eric Clark Museum of Picture Book Art in Amherst, Massachusetts, that award in September 2018, and the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Society of Illustrators in November of 2018. So obviously you're so accomplished, but still, how do books come to you? Do you choose projects that you want, or do writers come to you, publishers come to you, an agent comes to you?
Well, this is nice to be able to tell the world, if people are sort of interested to know about this, that publishers are the ones who put illustrators onto manuscripts. So authors do not come to me, and you know, authors who know how it works know not to come to me. and if people come to me, it's because they don't know that I look at things that come from publishers, and I have had ideas of my own brought them to publishers. And more often though, they have ideas of theirs. Someone has written something and they send it to me. So I've worked with a small number of publishers from the start of my career. I've kind of kept it low. But this last book, Levine Querido, is new for me, and it's new for them too, because they're a brand new publisher. This, I think, was on their second list.
Wow.
The Querido is a name that comes from I think it was it was a publisher in Holland who was from Spain, and I think he was killed in the Holocaust.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not sure what happened, whether, how that has been resurrected, but it's back in some way in Holland. And then Levine is Arthur Levine, who was the editor of Harry Potter and at Scholastic Books. And he left Scholastic a couple of years ago and started this company of his own.
So interesting. What happens though, if you can reveal, if you don't have chemistry with the writer, or do you have do you have an ability to talk to the writer before you decide on the project?
But in this industry and in this country, the standard practice is that the author and illustrator don't really talk to each other at all until the book is done, if ever.
Wow. I do remember reading that you only met I don't know what you call it, the technical picture person for one of the movable books in China.
Yes, the paper engineer. That's I love this story and the whole time of it. I love it. But that was a little bit different because I was working. I was talking to him. Can I run and get knick-knack paddywhack?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna go get it and come back so you'll know what I'm talking about. This is the book, and it's a very elaborate paper engineered book. And so it's the song This Old Man, He Played One. So he played knick-knack on my thumb.
Right.
So you pull a tab here and the boy's thumb comes up, and then the old man who plays knick-knack on it follows it. There's not one piece of paper that follows it. So they are inside the page. They're fairly complicated. He played knick-knack on he played 3 knick-knack on my knee. Bang. And it's
intricate.
So anyway, so it was my idea to do this song, make it into this book with all these different moving parts. And I worked very closely with, I think, definitely the best, most amazing paper engineer. But we did it all by phone. That was the thing about not meeting. We did it by phone and by fax and by email because he was in Santa Fe and I was in New York, and we just didn't meet.
Right.
But we became very close, good friends. For a whole year, we worked on it. And then the book went into production in China. And we both had to go to kind of oversee how it got made and printed. And that's when we met.
Extraordinary story, right?
Yeah, I thought so. But the normal course of events is that communication between the author and an illustrator really only happens through the editor or art director as an intermediary. And I think it's pretty much for the good of the book, because personal things could come up. It is the author's story, but that doesn't mean that the author had all the best ideas, and if there is something that if there's a great idea that the author didn't have, they might feel like, oh, don't do that, because personalities get involved.
Of course. It could be harder than a husband and wife, or
Right, and the marital therapist is the editor who decides whether this this great idea that the artist had, and maybe the author wouldn't have liked, whether it's good for the story or not. No, that because the arbiter finally is the editor and the publisher, right?
Yeah, well, it's like in a movie, if the screenwriter's there and the actor comes up with a line, what happens, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
In the poem that Isaac was writing in red and green, and blue and white, is that the writer's poem, or is that you as the illustrator illustrating the poem that you created?
That was the writer's poem. That was in the manuscript, and it was actually. You can see on that page, the poem is he's writing it on the paper, and it's appearing, sort of in a way, over his head. But on other pages later on, the poem he writes, I'll hold it up here, sort of deploys across, through space.
Yeah.
And it actually, if you look at this closely, you can kind of see that he's put the poem up in his window.
Yes.
And it's sort of an expression of the poem in these decorative letters, just fills the air. And so it was my idea to do that,
Right.
But it was, I was really, it was my biggest problem with this manuscript, because when you read it, it made perfect sense, and it was poetic, and it was like a song that you'd read some of the description of what happened, and then you'd get another piece of Isaac's poem, and it builds. The poem starts with some words, and then it continues in a cumulative way, which is cool, and you understand it completely while you're reading it. But if you had pictures, if the pages were mostly pictures, and then you come across this piece of text, which is the poem, what do? You see what if it just said it on the bottom where it says, wherever the words are,
Right.
It would make no sense. And
right. It's tough. It's a tough thing. You got to make it all work poetically, artistically, just appealing to children. At what age group would you say this was for? Because it's kind of deep, but it is.
Yeah, but it's very accessible. That was one thing that what I really liked about it was that, yes, it has a message, and yes, it's got all, these sort of adult things in it. But if you completely don't know that there's any message in it at all, it's a story that's worth it,
Yeah, exactly. It's all friendship and compassion and
and doing something, and it's dramatic, I think. So I never really think about age level in a way.
That's good. I like that.
But what I do, how to say this? It's if it's a good manuscript, the age is in there. The feelings in the manuscript are of a certain age. Well,
I always feel it's really tough to put ages in a niche the way editors and agents want, because something like Harry Potter, it's like 8 to 88, and so.
I totally agree with you, with this little exception that there's sort of a valve there. If there are things that little children won't get, so everything could be something and up.
Right, and up.
Yeah, but there are things that you just don't make any sense to a 5-year-old,
Yes.
And so that's where the manuscript, if it's well written and it's well done, it'll have a feeling that's accessible to a 5-year-old. If it's for a 5-year-old, and I make my pictures, and I just try to get what I feel in there, and I'm pretty sure that it comes through, that the pictures then will be right for that, for an age level.
Well, your whimsical stories, Mrs. Lovewright and Pearl is her cat, and Awful Ogre's Awful Day, and Z is for Moose, and some of the others.
I've also done some books that were very realistic and very young too. So it isn't even just cartoony or whimsy is young. It's
realistic. but for children.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you've done so many, and I know we don't like to use the word styles, but you've done so many kinds of
This is okay.
types of books, and it's so enchanting. Your website is totally enchanting. It pops off the page and you've got so many swirling, accessible bullets of information. paulozelinsky.com. One interesting side note, I guess, about you. I know you love toys, and I wanted you to just talk about Radish Bedunt.
That's sad, sort of embarrassing story. What I was just thinking of when I said that I've done very young but realistic pictures, where there was a series of three, they're supposedly middle grade novels, but they appeal to much younger children too, called Toys Go Out and Toy Dance Party and Toys Come Home. These three toys, the Toys trilogy that Emily Jenkins wrote. And it's not blowing my own horn to say that they are wonderful. It's blowing her horn, and she's a brilliant writer. And they are they are deep, and they are funny, and you have a rubber ball having an existential crisis, and it makes so much sense. And a 4-year-old will understand it. Well, in this, the book Toys Go Out has the toys, they get lost. There's this group of friendly toys that talk to each other. And so I decided I was going to dedicate it to one of my daughter's toys that had the similar kind of adventure. It was a little, now I'm forgetting, I think it was a little, it was a rabbit, yeah. And we went on a vacation, and something went wrong with our car, and we had to take the car in to be, to the Toyota dealer in Maine somewhere. And when we left, her favorite toy wasn't there anymore.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So we eventually we got back in touch with this repair shop, and they had it, and they mailed it back to her. So this and Anna, our older daughter, had this way with names. She just didn't name her toys in the normal way. I'm not going to come up with. They had some very strange names.
But
and I thought, this is the best. This toy, Radish Bedunt, is the name of her rabbit. I remembered this, and I thought, I get to dedicate a book to Radish Bedunt, and I'm not even going to say anything more than that.
Perfect. I love it, Anna.
Then, however, I guess it was, I don't remember what brought on my lack of confidence, but I decided to double check about the name. We had kept a little book of funny things that Anna did, and so I had one page. I remembered I had one page in this book with like a dozen of little drawings of the toys and the strange names that they had. Or there were a couple of big floppy things that came from a cousin that were named Mojo and Shiti. But there was Radish Bedunt on it, yeah. But it was not the toy I was remembering. It wasn't the rabbit that we lost in Maine. Radish Bedunt was her sippy cup. So the toy that I meant to dedicate it to was named Rabakeek. But so I dedicated one of my books to a sippy cup without meaning to.
Doesn't matter. At least you got the name Radish Bedunt in there, right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Paul, since we're wrapping up, unfortunately, we're getting out of time, but one quick question about, would you ever want to do animation or for film, or, that whole genre
Wow.
of the world?
Sort of, yes, absolutely. I think I would love to, but I had an abortive career like a year and a half, 2 years ago. A friend who was involved in a very major studio making a very major animation, if it ever was going to really happen, was writing it. This is an illustrator friend who didn't want to do pictures for this animation, and he asked if I would help design characters. And so this is sort of like a new thing for me. And just as I was starting to get into it with the studio, it turns out this was just a very initial phase that I was hired for, and that ended. So my career's just, but I've done little animations on my own, and some of them are on my website, just to go with the books. And I made a little trailer for Red and Green and Blue and White.
Yes, that's a beautiful little trailer. I love that trailer. And that's also on the website, Paul O. Zelinsky.
Yes, and see, if you want to get to it directly,
levinecarita.com.
No, I looked there today, and I didn't see it there, and I'm going to have to tell them and see if they can fix that. But if you go to it's on their YouTube page, and if you just go to YouTube and do a search, and if you search for these words, the true meaning of the holidays,
and the trailer will come up,
and maybe Zelinsky too.
Okay.
Trailer will come up.
We've got writer Lee Wind. We've got illustrator Paul O. Zelinsky. We've got publisher Levine Carita, and we've got Red and Green and Blue and White, and the true meaning of the holidays. And thank you so much, Paul O. Zelinsky, for joining us on Mia's World. And
it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's really fun to see the colors, the explanation of the art, meshing with the words, meshing with the aesthetics of the book. And it's really, your website is totally entrancing. So check out paulozelinsky.com.
Oh, and maybe, let's see, you could follow me on Instagram or Twitter too, because this is something I don't do it really for any good purpose, but sometimes I like just count the number of followers, and I love when it goes up. So, so this is an opportunity. Paul O. Zelinsky on all those things.
Okay, why not get those up, since you love numbers? And what we're going to go out of Mia's World with a beautiful song composed by my friend who was a guest just recently, Zoe Lewis, in honor of my other friend, my dear friend Ilona Smith, Roykin Smith, and she was a magnificent artist and cabaret singer, just a joy. She just died in August of this year, and she wore the most incredible red eyelashes. And Zoe Lewis wrote a song in honor of Ilona called Eyelashes. And it's got, ironically, a reference in there to Rapunzel. So check it out. And this is Ilona Roy Smithkin combined with Zoe Lewis and Eyelashes. So thank you so much, Paul O. Zelinsky. Thank you to Jade Zabrich, my editor, engineer, singer-songwriter, and Mia's World. Thank you, and go out into the world and enjoy some art like Paul O. Zelinsky's art. Thank you for having us in your home.
Romantic fools often direct their hearts to assorted anatomical parts. But I stumbled upon the sweetest reverie the day that you first winked at me. You and your eyelashes are causing car crashes all over this town. Trendsetters are making mad dashes whenever you and those satin sashes are hanging around. Oh, you and those eyelashes know just what a panache is. Merci beaucoup. Film stars with fancy mustaches, Rapunzelesque lasses, pale in comparison with you. Oh, those ocular fringes give me twinges so my knees go weak. The size of the visors around your eyes is simply magnifique. You and those eyelashes are causing hot flashes. You could make a phoenix rise from the ashes. how quickly it seems that time passes looking at you and those eyelashes. So my knees go weak. The size of the visors around those eyes is simply magnifique. You and those eyelashes are causing car crashes. You could make a phoenix rise from the ashes. How quickly it seems that time passes looking at you and those eyelashes.